I urge you to stretch beyond your current spiritual ability to receive personal revelation. Oh, there is so much more that your Father in heaven wants you to know. President Russell M. Nelson. Welcome, Carly. Thank you for chatting with me today. Before we start talking, I wanted to give our listeners a little bit of background on how we connected, and feel free to add to what I'm saying too, Carly. Carly and I were in the same ward a few years ago in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then because of that, I'm her friend on Facebook. And when I was starting this podcast and thinking about who do I know that is open and willing to have these conversations about the divine feminine, about our Heavenly Mother, Carly came to mind, because I know that I've seen a few times specifically that you've shared like, hey, did you know we have this awesome doctrine? And interacted when I did similar things. So I reached out to her and she graciously agreed to chat with me a little bit today about just her personal experiences and just kind of everyday life, kind of personal experiences in connecting with and coming to know Heavenly Mother. What would you add, Carly? What did I miss?
Well, that was a great intro. Thank you. I'm really excited to be able to chat with you. And I guess also just that I love your kids.
Oh, that's true.
When we were in the same ward.
That's true. She was also an awesome babysitter. Like while I was at a birth overnight once as a doula. So she's awesome. That's a really good, important thing to mention. You should see them these days. They're giants. I'll have to send you a picture afterwards. Okay. So I just wanted to start by asking you, will you share your journey of seeking and celebrating Heavenly Mother and highlight those things that stand out as the most meaningful moments or quotes or insights along that path?
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to think like when it began, and it felt too intangible to really recognize. I know that I had this vague notion that there was a Heavenly Mother growing up because it's something I knew on my mission and had taught on my mission in a few circumstances, but I don't think I realized the implications and the importance for a long time. And one of the experiences that comes to mind that changed that and kind of brought the discussion to the forefront was a book group I'm a part of. It was a bunch of women in Utah when it started, and now we're all over the country. But I think it was our very first discussion was about Heavenly Mother, and we read some poetry and some talks and just discussed it. And it was really empowering and impactful for me to hear women from all different walks of life talking about their relationship with their Heavenly Mother and sharing thoughts and ideas. And it moved it to the forefront and to the mainstream, I guess, for me, and really sparked a lot of curiosity. So that was a really important part of the journey, I think. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it was a group of women getting together. And I just think there's a lot of power there. So that helped. And then just over the years since then, I think I've seen more and more people discussing her, the work you're doing, like social media. She is on the mind a lot, and I've loved seeing other people's insights. So it's just become kind of an endeavor to discover not just, that she exists, but now that we know she's here and understand how crucial of a doctrine that is, now it's a matter of getting to know her and what is she like, and what does this mean for me as a woman?
I like that. How did you connect with that group of women that you had the book club with?
Yeah, so I did a semester abroad at the Jerusalem Center when I was at BYU. And so one of the women who was on that same semester with me, she just was inspired and felt like she should start a book group, and reached out to a few female friends that she had that she just thought would be interested. And so I already knew a couple of them, but most of them I didn't know. And now we're all very close. But it was all because of one woman who was willing to kind of put herself out there and make it happen.
I love that for so many reasons, because like, I love that you point out it was this one woman who said like, hey, let's chat. And you probably have read lots of other books about a number of other subjects, I'm right, since then, that have been meaningful and awesome. But it also, that first meeting sparked this journey for you. And if she had been like, if she'd had that thought, oh, I should have this book group, and never got around to it, or just felt a little too nervous to extend the invitations or whatever, so many people's lives and their trajectories could have been totally different. So I love how we can look back and think of like these one acts that these one powerful person does that seems like kind of a small thing that can make a really big difference.
Yes, I love that. It has made a huge difference, I think.
Yeah. I love too that you said that like the first step was like, oh, now we know that Heavenly Mother exists. Where do we go from here? This isn't just like, that is not the destination or the end point, right? It's not like, but it does feel like sometimes it takes a lot of work to get to that point where we're openly acknowledging her existence. And then you get there and you're like, whoa, there is so much to explore and discover. And Jess, the other host on this podcast, has mentioned before on the podcast and in conversation with me that when she has told people, hey, I'm starting a podcast about Heavenly Mother, they're like, what are you going to talk about the whole time, right? Like you're going to have multiple episodes where you just talk about Heavenly Mother. And it's been so enriching in just the handful of interviews we've had so far to see how much there is to talk about and to explore. So my question next for you is, how do you personally connect with Heavenly Mother?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways that it's kind of become a part of my life. And I guess the easiest comparison is just like there's lots of different ways to connect with Heavenly Father that people have experienced throughout their life. It's no different from that. But I lately have been seeing a lot of her in nature. And that's one thing that just comes to mind immediately, because it's really hard for me to understand like what femininity means, like from the world's perspective. I think there's a lot of confusion about what that means and should be. And I think sometimes the emphasis gets placed on the wrong things. But when I look at nature, it just feels like such a beautiful combination of the masculine and the feminine. And I don't know how to describe it, but that has been what has helped me see traces of her everywhere, and traces of that divine femininity everywhere. And it's a type of femininity that feels very godly. And but it's strange how it still feels feminine. I don't know how to describe it, but I really believe there's that, the masculine and the feminine, that there's differences between our heavenly parents, and that they create such beauty when brought together. So that's been one way that I've just started to try and get to know her attributes through. And the other thing that comes to mind is that President Nelson quote where he talks about, I pulled it up, where he says, I urge you to stretch beyond your current spiritual ability to receive personal revelation. And he promises that, he says, there's so much more that your Father in heaven wants you to know, and really invited us all to seek our own personal revelation. And that, I think, gave me a lot of confidence to start asking more questions about her and talking to her and trying to figure out who she is and what role she plays in my life, and pondering about her. And I've seen a lot of good come from that. So I think those are my main ways of connecting with her, are through nature and through seeking more information about her.
Yeah.
Revelation.
I want to talk a little bit more about both of those things, but starting with the second one you said, because it's fresh on my mind. I appreciate you sharing that quote and talking about how that was an invitation for you to learn more about your Heavenly Mother, because I think sometimes, I don't know if this is a misperception or maybe a way that seeking Heavenly Mother and making these connections does go sometimes for some people, but you might think that because she's not yet openly talked about frequently from general conference pulpits or openly acknowledged in the scriptures in obvious ways, that to seek and connect with her, you'd kind of have to go outside of like the typical traditional patterns, right? But you're saying, I listened to the words of a prophet like I've been told to do since I was 2 years old. And I heard him saying, there's so much more that you can learn, and like that's beyond what's coming out of my mouth, that there is so much more that you personally can learn and explore. And you take his words as guidance, and you recognize that personally there's a lot that you can do, that it gives you personal power and personal connection with your heavenly parents. And even as you were reading that quote, sometimes I hear church leaders or others in my ward refer to Heavenly Father, and I like to think, oh, what if we just replace that with Heavenly Parents or with Heavenly Mother? Is there so much more that our Heavenly Parents want us to know? Is there so much more that our Heavenly Mother wants us to know? And while those things are totally true, I also was like, you know what? There is so much more that our Heavenly Father wants us to know. He wants us to know that He is eternally paired with an incredible Goddess who is our eternal Mother, who is equal to Him in glory, might, and majesty, and that we can and should have a personal experiences with her and personal revelation about her, just as we do with Him. And like, that doesn't have to be separate from our relationship with our Heavenly Father. And Jess and I have talked about in other episodes about how the coming to know and connect with and worshiping our Mother in heaven can enhance our relationship with our Heavenly Father and all of their children, right? Recognizing their paired partnership changes the way that we kind of see the world and everybody in it. But we'll get into that in a few minutes.
I love that perspective. Just really quick.
Yes, please.
It reminded me, I really love how you said that sometimes it seems like we have to look outside of the mainstream to find her, because like there isn't a ton that's explicitly been said about her. But I think you're so right that so much of her comes from just what we're already studying, and she's there. And I just think about how most of my, like, of the most powerful experiences I had, especially I guess early on and now, with trying to get to know her, were sparked by something that is otherwise maybe viewed as very just like run of the mill. And an example that came to mind is I was studying Come Follow Me when we were doing the Book of Mormon year. And it just asked the question, it was talking about Lehi and his sons, and it was talking about what do we learn about how Heavenly Father parents us based on these verses. And it was just like, oh, what can I also learn about how Heavenly Mother parents us? Because she's there too. And for some reason, even just adding her into this, question and this pondering I was doing as part of Come Follow Me was really, really meaningful to me. I was a new mom at the time, and I was trying to figure out my role as a mother. And I just love that it was sparked by this really thoughtful question in Come Follow Me, and it ended up connecting me even stronger to my Heavenly Mother and thinking about, what can I learn from the scriptures about her as a parent also.
I like that. And I feel like I also, as I made the transition into early parenthood, asked some of the same questions, right? About like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this parenting thing. And we do have manuals, Come Follow Me, and others that say, what do we know about Heavenly Father and his parenting, and how does that affect us? But I'm like, I feel very feminine in my role as a mother. And so I also want to ask those questions too. What can I learn about my Heavenly Mother from the experience of parenting? And what can I learn from my Heavenly Mother about how I ought to parent? Both of those questions.
I love that.
Okay, so I still want to go back to connecting with Heavenly Mother in nature. And I wonder if you can give some examples of, like, whether it's water or rocks or trees or mountain, what things stand out to you as being especially powerful and reminding you of your mother in heaven or your partnered parents.
So one experience that came to mind was when Dave and I were our kids were there too. So we took a trip to Kauai, and as part of it, we drove up Waimea Canyon, and it's this beautiful landscape. They call it like the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, but essentially the way we decided to explore it was we took a road that has, it goes up the canyon, and it has all these viewpoints along the way. And there's one final viewpoint at the end where you kind of stop and turn around. But at every viewpoint, we'd pull over and just be blown away. And before we went, we had looked up pictures online. We were like, this looks pretty, but of course it's different when you're there. And it was just breathtaking at every stop. And it was a really just enriching morning in terms of connecting to nature. And then at the very end, our two little kids were in the car, and they had fallen asleep. And so instead of hiking up to the viewpoint all together, I went first while Dave waited in the car with the kids. And then we were going to swap. And I hiked up a little bit, and you basically get to this ledge. And all of a sudden, it's just this incredible, expansive view of a valley with these like rough rock canyons on the side, but all these waterfalls going down them and lush green. And in front of you is the ocean. And it's just, it took my breath away. And I hadn't been explicitly thinking about Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother that morning. I hadn't, this topic wasn't really like at the front of my mind. But as soon as I looked at that scene, I just felt like this is them. Like this is their collaboration perfectly. And I don't want to pull out like stereotypes of masculine and feminine, but it did feel like, it was this great contrast of the rough, jagged rocks and the flowing water and the delicate greenery, and there were details right in front of me that were so sharp, and then there was also the beauty of the things that were far away that were kind of more blurred. And I've tried to really put to words since then. I've thought about it a lot. Like, what about this just felt like such a wonderful combination of the masculine and the feminine? And I still can't really put to words what it was about this view, but it just spoke to me so strongly that she and our Heavenly Father are a team, and that what they create together is better than what either of them would have created separately. And that was really meaningful to me.
I like that. And I like, if I can go into a little bit about like your hesitancy to say like these things were masculine, these things were feminine. And I feel like in a true partnered marriage that we can pull out the best, like we pull out the best qualities in each other, right? And some of those might mean that like stereotypically masculine qualities my husband pulls out in me, and stereotypically feminine qualities I pull out in my husband, or whatever, like, so that there's this unity. If we believe that our heavenly parents are one, then their unity, like you're saying, is more than their combined separate like glory and awesomeness, which totally exists, but them coming together. Yeah. Okay. So I'm having trouble putting this into words too, but I feel like yeah.
It's like the cliche of like synergy.
Right.
It just feels like, and not necessarily, I guess I said it's better, but not even that it's like better or worse, but just that it was so clearly like different than what it would have been if it was just one of them. And I thought about my own marriage and how like, if Dave was put in charge of designing a canyon, and if I was put in charge of designing a canyon, like it would be similar, where what we created on our own would be different than if we came together and worked collaboratively. And I just really love, I know we don't have, I don't think we have like explicit doctrine about Heavenly Mother being, or like what role she played in the creation of the earth. But to me in that moment, it just felt really clear that she is everywhere in the natural world, just like Heavenly Father is. And that has really helped me ground to her, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. I like to, when I've had similar experiences to that, then it invites me anytime I have another experience like that. The next time you go hiking, or next time you see a beautiful view or whatever, to also use that as an opportunity to connect.
Yeah, I love that.
So as you've gone on this journey, coming to better know your Heavenly Mother, how has that shaped the way you see yourself?
This is like, I think the biggest impact that it's had is that it's really helped me have a healthier view of myself. Mm-hmm. I think for a long time, it's no secret that the world doesn't always value traits that are feminine, and doesn't always value women. Mm-hmm. And so for a long time, I felt really disempowered as a woman and vulnerable. I felt like a target because I'm a woman. And I felt really resentful sometimes of like that truth or that experience. And I had experiences where being a woman did put me at risk and did like lead to some trauma. And I was really angry about that. And so I think for a while I kind of blamed, my womanhood or my femininity for that trauma and that pain. And coming to know Heavenly Mother has really helped me see the beauty in that, in my being a woman, mm-hmm. and the value in that, and the incredible power in that too. And that these traits don't make me weak. They are what really connect me to the ultimate source of strength. And that was really meaningful to me because I mentioned earlier that I think sometimes the world's idea of what it means to be a woman can get really messy and focus on how you look or all these things that weren't as helpful for me. and thinking about Heavenly Mother instead as the ultimate role model for a powerful woman, and a divine woman and a beautiful woman, and what does that mean, has really helped me like refocus on the blessing that it is to be who I am and the potential that there is, rather than focusing on some of the pain that can come as a part of our experience here on earth.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like all of that is so important for people to know. Like, there is so much power in knowing that we have a Heavenly Mother, but beyond that, in connecting with her and finding out about who she is and how she operates. And I think that's really important because some of the problematic messages about womanhood can sometimes be conflated with some like myths or folklore about why we don't speak about Heavenly Mother or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But when we step beyond those and come to recognize her in her power and equality with our Heavenly Father, then it is really a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that.
What about the way that you have seen others, that you interact with others? How does coming to know Heavenly Mother influence that?
Yeah, this is interesting because I wasn't expecting, I think, the influence that it's had. It really, the doctrine of Heavenly Mother makes me so excited to share the gospel in a way that I normally would be kind of hesitant about and worried. I don't know. But I think all of our doctrines are beautiful and, potentially life-changing for people who apply them. But there's something about this doctrine of a Heavenly Mother that feels like I feel such like this urgent need to share it. And I grew up in a family where my mom and I were the only active members. And so I am really used to, I'm often thinking of what people who aren't members of the church are thinking, because that's my family. That's most of my friends growing up. And so I also sometimes hesitate to be like too quote unquote churchy on social media, because I don't want my friends to feel isolated or like they can't connect to me. But for some reason, like something about Heavenly Mother, it just transcends all that fear and trepidation about sharing, because I just feel like it's such a core doctrine that it's worth sharing. And it reminds me of when I was a missionary and preached my gospel, the very first principle of the very first lesson that you teach is God is our loving Heavenly Father. And of course, the other part of that is that God is also our loving Heavenly Mother, and that we have these heavenly parents. And I don't think it's an accident that they thought that should be one of the first things that people learn, was that they have a divine parent. And so I think just expanding that to include knowledge of both of our divine parents would of course be potentially like impactful, I guess, for those who hear it. It just feels like one of those things where I would want it to be like one of the first things I learned. And so it's been interesting how natural it feels to just talk about it. And it's also one of the doctrines that I'm most proud of in our church. I hear a lot of, like, sometimes I hear critics of Christianity talk about how I was listening to one, just like a podcast, but the host was talking about, as a side note, like, oh, Christianity hasn't always made sense to me. Like, I don't understand how women could get behind like no female deity and the treatment of Eve. And I was just like so excited. I emailed them and I was like, guess what? There's like a sect of Christianity, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where that's not the case. And it's not just like our sect. I believe it really is, true, a true doctrine that we have this Heavenly Mother. But I was just really excited to be able to share, and nothing came of it, of course, but excited to share that here's a religion that teaches that, the most powerful beings in the universe are, men and women, and that we have potential to become like that. And that's really exciting to me. And that carries over to Eve too, and how we view her as beloved and respected. And that means a lot to me as a woman and as a follower of Christ. And I think it helps. The hope is that it can help overcome some of the pain that has existed in the past when women haven't always felt like there was a place for them, or haven't always been aware of what their divine potential is.
Yes. While you were talking, it reminded me of two things specifically. The first was this was memorable enough that I think a year, or probably more like 2 years later, I remember being on Facebook and seeing a post from you doing this, what you just referred to, I just want to share this doctrine because it transcends my fears about people feeling awkward about me, being churchy I just remember you being did you know that we know and love, that we have a doctrine of our Heavenly Mother, that there's a divine feminine that we also view as God? And I just remember your just pure excitement coming through in this post. And I think that was probably, I don't even know if you know which specific post I'm referring to, but I know it was at least a year ago.
Yeah, I think it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe it was around Mother's Day last year. I don't know. But
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. It was meaningful enough that to me, it made a difference at that time, especially because at that time, I was really looking for breadcrumbs from is anybody else kind of tuned into this? And since then, I've really found this amazing community that I get to chat with multiple times a week as I record these interviews and have these awesome conversations. But I was looking for breadcrumbs of is anybody else feeling like this is something we need to be talking way more about? And I saw that and I was like, Carly knows.
Aww.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And then the other thing it reminded me of is in a previous episode of this podcast, it hasn't yet been published at the time that we're talking, but when this one's published, it will be a previous episode. I interviewed Patrick Mason, the author of Restoration and Planted, and probably other books as well. Those are the ones that I've read. But in Restoration, he briefly mentions this, and we talked more in the interview with him about how he was teaching graduate students in religion at Claremont University. So not LDS students, but the class was about gender and Mormonism, and that they talked about all these things that, you're saying, there are these things that maybe women haven't felt as valued or equal in the history of our church. And he was kind of going through those sticky issues, and near the end of the semester showed them the doctrine of Heavenly Mother. And they were like, you have been holding out on us. This is the good stuff. You should have led with this. Wow. Why haven't we been talking about this? So everybody should go back and listen to that episode, that interview with Patrick Mason, to get the firsthand account of that experience. But that really stuck with me, that this is something that we should lead out with and be excited about, that we have partnered heavenly parents, that as women, we have a divine role model, and that we want to grow up eternally to be like her. So
I love that.
Do you have any last thoughts or experiences or things that come to mind that you haven't had a chance to share so far that you would want to share before we close?
It's kind of random, so it's okay if it doesn't, you don't have to include it. But one other thought that came to mind is just I forgot to mention it earlier as one of the things that have prompted me to be thinking about Heavenly Mother more. And it's just that my daughter is too, and she's starting to be at that age where she is understanding that some concepts, like she has heavenly parents, and something about teaching this doctrine to a child has made it feel so much less fringe or outside the norm, and instead has made me realize how core and central it is to our development, our learning, just that knowledge of heavenly parents. And it feels so natural for me to tell her, you have a mama and dada on earth, and then she says that she has a heavenly mama and a heavenly dada, but it just like she knows that she has these heavenly parents who care about her as well. And I think I had kind of built these divisions between Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother, or things like that. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but I almost had kind of a wall around her. Like, when is it okay to go over that wall? And instead it just makes me realize there's no wall, but like they are one, they are united. And anytime I'm talking about Heavenly Father, I feel great talking about Heavenly Mother too. And especially having those conversations with the toddler, you realize how natural and normal that is. And that's been helpful for me too.
I echo that, and I love that. And I've had similar experiences teaching my children. I feel like that's really powerful. And I love that we have, like, I'm going to get tearful about it, that we have a generation of children growing up who've been taught that in their home from the age of 2, that they have a Heavenly Mother and a Heavenly Father who love and care about them. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thanks for being awesome.
It's been wonderful. I'm so glad I got to do this. Thank you so much for the work you're doing as well. It's making a huge difference, I think.
And it's invigorating and fun. So.
I love it.
All right. Thanks, Carly.
Thank you.
Thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. We love this community and would be thrilled to hear from you. Please leave us a review. If you would like to support the podcast, you can make a monthly donation of 99 cents on up to $9.99 at anchor.fm/inherimage/support. We hope you'll subscribe and join us again next Sunday for another inspiring episode.